Amen. All right, here is Heather and Scott.
Thanks. Thanks, Lydia.
Thanks, Lydia.
Thank you.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Scott, and
I'm Heather.
we're married.
We're the sons.
We're 2 months from 25 years, and I get the great opportunity to launch us today. Welcome to Charting the Course Relationship Workshop. And just as Lydia and Rhonda were getting us set, it was just, I was experiencing a flood of emotions, quite frankly, for two reasons. One, on behalf of the church, just again want to extend, I work for Bethany. Before I worked here, this was Heather and I's church. We brought babies to church with us. We have lamented the loss of a son in this very room, like through it all. And so on behalf of the church, we're so proud that you're here. And then also as we were getting kicked off, I was just mindful of like what a varied state we come from. Like geographically, all 6 of our Bethany locations, as well as a lot of you that maybe don't attend Bethany on a regular basis are here. We have people who are identified as married, many that are widowed or single. We have people that are kind of in that last third of life and thinking about relationships there. We have many that are not in that last third of life. And so the great hope today is that you would feel welcomed, and that, as those goals say, that you would feel encouraged, that you would, that moniker of charting the course, that some things would happen today by the power of the Holy Spirit that would equip you for the road ahead. As we bring up our picture of our family,
Aren't they cute?
Yeah, they're cute. Yeah. So I am Scott. I've worked at Bethany for, like 14 years now. I'm a lead pastor of Bethany North and also serve as the senior pastor of the host of Bethany locations. It's a great honor to do that. And Heather is a relationship expert.
I am the CEO and founder of Navigate Family Therapy, which is a service organization to private practice faith-based clinicians, and provide community and support and all the business sides of things. But my heart is really about relationships amongst professionals, thriving relationships, and the counseling that we provide. And I'm also a mom. And these 4 kids up here represent college. Avery, right here, away in Ohio now. College, high school, the high school kid with the blonde hair that has the same hairdo he had in college. And that's Kincaid. And then we have Harper on the far right. She's our middle schooler. And then we have an elementary kid on the far left, and that's Skylar. And as Scott mentioned, we have a boy in heaven that would have been 15 that would be right in the middle there. So you see a lot of joy here. What you don't see is there's some struggles sometimes in being a family, right?
Yeah. What is seen, picture that looks like that exists at a park near our home, Pine Ridge Park. What is unseen is the amount of struggles that to sit in that space 25 years in, there's been no short of 4 times that as husband and wife, we weren't sure we were going to make it. That like literally we needed outside help, that we had seasons of extreme disconnection. So what is seen looks easy. What is unseen can be a struggle.
Mm-hmm. And I comment on how cute they are, leaning into each other. That's so rare.
Yeah.
That they're cozy and leaning into each other. What's unseen is the sibling rivalry and the terrible things that they say and do to each other, because that's real too, right?
Yeah. So we're here today kind of all in very different places, but from the same place. That we were made in the image of God in order to have relationships. Relationships are hard, and relationships are essential. And so the purpose of today is that awareness of our calling to be people reminded of our identity being formed in the image of God and being encouraged in our relationships, because relationships matter. We know the call is to intimacy, not to shame. Face to face with God and others, not disconnected. Love God, love others. Like we could spit it out all day long, but it's in the actuality of our relationships that things start to break down. I say often, like it's almost easier conceptually to think of mission being something that happens in a different part of the world that I contribute my time or my money to. Much harder to think of my actual life and actual relationships as my mission. But I'm here today, we're all here today, under that kind of remembrance that it is in our relationships that our theology is lived out. It's in our relationships that this love of God and love of others that we practice what we preach. And sadly, so many of us are reporting a lack of flourishing relationships.
Yeah, and as Lydia mentioned, this is something that we're seeing as an ongoing problem. We haven't really emerged yet fully from the impacts of COVID and just the impacts of our world. As she mentioned, Vivek Murthy is our Surgeon General. He has spoken about this epidemic of loneliness being one of the key factors to our health and well-being. The World Health Organization, in fact, has talked about loneliness and depression being the biggest health epidemics of all. Not COVID, not cancer, it's loneliness, because that impacts our well-being, it impacts our health, and that's where we struggle, right? That's where our bodies suffer. This is the key to our connection. Do you know that depression is actually highest in the countries that are the wealthiest and the most well-fed? The depression is highest where we have the most to comfort us, so to say. But these aren't the comforts that we need, right? We need the comforts of connection. What is unseen is the struggles we've gone through here. What is true is that we have absolutely fought for the intentionality and intimacy that we know we can have in relationship. So although we've gone through our struggles as a family, I will absolutely speak to the truth that we also have these moments of joy and connection and beauty when those siblings do comfort each other, when they do reach out to care for each other, when they call from Ohio to Washington to catch up, and for us to look upon our family and have moments where there is joy because God has given us a picture of how we can live into intimacy and connection, and we know we have to work for it. And so this is something that we're going to talk about today, how to get there and how to move past some of these struggles that we face as a world.
We've called the course, or the workshop, with all humility, we know that workshops don't change lives. God does, and relationships do. But as a team at Bethany, we started to say, what can we just put our hand on the plow and just contribute to get people into a space where they consider more of what God wants to do in their life? So charting the course, the hope would be today that you would leave like, I am a mariner. I'm a Seattle Mariner fan, but I'm a mariner. I love to run boats through Puget Sound or through Desolation Sound or whatever else. I'm a fisherman, so I actually love real charts, and these are these huge paper charts you can roll up. They actually, in our son's bathroom and their bedrooms, they have charts on the wall. I love charts. So the hope today is that you remember the chart of your life, that you remember your calling and your core relationships, and maybe being called to some new outlets for places of flourishing, and just this call to remembrance. The Bible says in Isaiah, search me and know me, O God. And the purpose of today is really, the hope would be kind of revealing, opening up our hearts, revealing the veneer, looking at some of our hurts and pains. Our workshop speakers are going to be doing some of this as well, just to get you to a place where you can look at some of what's going on inside of you, that we together would be after flourishing relationships. And so our methodology today.
Yeah, our next slide will show what we're going to talk about today. Is we are hoping that our purpose for our togetherness today is to build and sustain thriving relationships, to look at this biblically and scientifically and practically. And this is the practical. This is where we're going to go. We're going to start with reach. This is our model for relationship. This kind of comes from my training in emotion-focused therapy, which is one of the paramount relationship therapies that are out there that's really proven to change dynamics in relationships with families, with couples, with individuals. Also from neuroscience. Neuroscience tells us that we are hardwired to connect with other people. It's in our DNA to survive, to be connected. Relationships are this crucial, essential part of our survival. So we're going to take you through these steps of needing to risk and reach. And then in that risking and reaching, we respond. And then sometimes there's rupture. But in that rupture, we seek repair. And then finally, we're going to dive into the reward of all this. So how we do this, we think about, I used to teach developmental psychology at Seattle Pacific University, and I think about each stage of life. people ideally are inviting us into that next stage of our journey. They're helping us make sense of our world. I love development. I love witnessing these 4 kids that I have growing up and their new stages of life unfurling and unfolding. And when we have people who reflect those experiences that we have all through our lives, not just in childhood, we develop what's called healthy attachment. We feel less alone. We feel valid. When somebody says, I see that experience you're having, and it matters to me that you're having it, and it makes sense that you're having a feeling about it, and when that reflection happens, that's the power of neuroscience. That's the power of how God made us to connect and to thrive in response to another human being. If I am not alone, I know that I can handle what is coming for me in life.
I love that. And I can preach about it all day long, and yet I struggle to live into it. So I can tell you, community matters, and then this is also me. I got something to do, and I'm going to figure out how to do it.
By himself.
So I don't know if you've seen this. This is like on the interwebs. This is literally me. So Heather and I were doing a remodel project on an island last spring. We had to move all the beds out. And then there's like a king, there's full, there's queen.
Mattresses.
To come out, mattresses in order for hardwood laminate floors to be laid down. I was like, what are you going to do? I'm like, I'm going to do it myself because, I don't want to bug people and people are busy and da-da-da-da. She's like, how are you going to do that? I was like, well, I'm not going to use a rolling chair. I think I had a dolly or something.
Use a dolly.
Heather's like, you are, and I love you, but an idiot. Like, call your friend Morrow. He will drop everything to help you. Now, but what's underneath this is personally, during COVID, extremely lonely time for me. The disintegration of a lot of core relationships. Being a church leader in a world that's kind of coming away from church at the center of their lives. People that, that we were previously aligned with and that now let some of the fractions that we were seeing out there fracture our, and we're like, wait, what? So we're now got work to do and we're rolling mattresses on dollies.
Hurting our backs.
Yeah.
Breaking our bodies.
And thankfully for her, she's like, call your friend. And guess what? My friend showed up. And we had an incredible time. And then afterwards, we went out and got a beer and a hamburger and connected about life and family. And so this is the risking and the reaching because it's easy to talk about, much easier to preach it, much more difficult for all of us to live into it. We're in this together, single, married, beginning of life, later in life, like this call towards, I want my life to look less like when I need someone, I'm figuring out how to utilize a chair to get me there, and more about turning towards somebody else that God has put in my life, or a new friendship, or my spouse, or a new relationship at church in order to deepen relationship that comes with risk.
Mm-hmm. And this next slide has this quote that, but everything exposed by the light becomes visible, and everything that is illuminated becomes light. This is Ephesians 5:13. And this is this anchor verse for deep relational work. What happened in COVID is we all went inside, and we sort of went insular too, right? And we sort of had a lot more happen in that time of insideness and that we're still dealing with. The terms that came out of COVID that we didn't really talk about before, ghosting. People just drop that relationship and you don't hear from them anymore. You don't see them anymore. Cancel culture. You're no longer in my life. I'm canceling you out of my life. This thing that divides us is more important than the relationship we once had. I will tell you with such pride and joy that one of the reasons I absolutely love this church is because of the ways there is unity and bringing together of people across voting lines and dividing lines and different views. We come together, and I know that the pastors of our church and the leaders of our church are fighting hard to move through this time of division. Because you can't love guns and be pro-choice. You can't do these opposite things. There's very binary beliefs right now in our world that people are fractioned and moving towards instead of moving together. And I will tell you, there's, probably not as many actual toxic people in the world that we think there are, right? I mean, this idea that there's going to be a wonderful seminar on boundaries, so I won't speak much to it. Boundaries are so important. It's so important to protect ourselves from the harm that we can cause each other. And I will tell you that even though the greatest love we can experience is in relationships, the greatest harm we can experience is in relationships, right? We can all nod to that. We've experienced that relational harm. And so there's work for us to do there. This isn't just merely go out and, be friends with everybody, but let's think intentionally of how we can draw more intimacy, more connection. I think in those relationships where there's rifts, there's opportunity. And oftentimes, we have growth to do. We have work to do in finding that connection. We think of ourselves as sort of needy in childhood, needy of attachment, needy of connection. We talk about attachment now over and over when it comes to children. They need healthy connection with adults. And then we somehow think that when we get older, we're supposed to be independent. We're supposed to carry that couch by ourselves and somehow figure it out with a rolling chair. And that's not how God made us to be. He made us to be interdependent, to rely on one another, to need one another, to feel safe in the world. This attachment theory tells us that when human beings arrive, they actually need a reflective other adult to love and care for them, for their brains to even develop properly, for them to be able to move into education and nutrition and all these other things that we look at. They need that strong bond of relationship. And guess what? We need it too, our whole lives long. And we maybe experienced an imperfect experience of childhood, and that can lead to attachment where we feel anxious in relationships, or we lose trust in people, or we're a little tender or sensitive. These aren't things that need to doom us. Nobody is doomed by that. The rewriting of those narratives from our childhood can happen in healthy adult bonds with friends, in partnership, even in our co-working relationships. The father of attachment, his name is John Bowlby, who did all this really beautiful research on attachment in the mid-1900s. He noticed that when kids went to the hospital at a young age, they would not allow parents to come with them. And when they had a major surgery or something, typically you'd stay in the hospital for about a week or so, and the parents weren't allowed to be there. And these little ones would go in and they'd have a traumatic experience of a surgery in a hospital setting without their attachment figure. And that week or two later, when the parents would come back, the child would be different. It makes me want to cry. They would be changed. And that trust factor would have to be rebuilt. And ideally it did get rebuilt, but not always. And he noticed that. He said, we're doing this wrong. We need our people when we are hurting. We need this our whole. So the father of attachment says, I love this quote, we do unto ourselves as we have been done to. So when we think about the relationships we've had in childhood or difficult relationships even in adulthood, those messages that, you're told that you're too stupid. That becomes our self-talk. Oh, I'm so stupid. Why did I do that thing? For me, I grew up with a parent that second-guessed me a lot, I'd kind of come up with something, and they'd go, whoa, why didn't you do it that way? Or kind of would be critical. So, whoa, am I so self-critical? I really think of all the possible problems before I can come up with what I really think about something. We second-guess ourselves because of these relationships, but we can also find healing bonds. Guess who doesn't second-guess me a lot? This guy. He's so good at seeing the value of what I'm going through. And you know what? Sometimes we need people to call us out. But more often than not, we need those healthy attachment people who love us and see us and move into connection with us.
One thing I'll just add there is we learn from our failures. So when Heather talks about being raised in a certain way, I was raised in culture like we just worked. Like we weren't even allowed to be sick. Norwegian, you're not sick, And we worked as fishermen in Canada. We'd work 100 days straight. So it's been 25 years of me getting more comfortable with emotion, and how I've often learned to succeed is when I failed awfully. So again, remember, it's easier to teach, much harder to do. And we've got an illustration later about some huge failures of when we don't show up for each other. But there's opportunity, and I love when you're saying no one is doomed, that there's places what we haven't experienced we can recreate with healthy relationship.
Yeah. Attachment is essentially about belonging to something greater than myself. And when I am more connected to others, I can actually be more myself. And we'll unpack that a little more later.
Yeah, and we have the slide of the ARE that is helpful for this as well.
Yeah, so as we move into kind of the practicals of this, the ARE, this comes from emotion-focused therapy research. Sue Johnson is the key researcher here. But ARE is we all need to be in relationships, and we want to strive to be people who act this way, that are attentive, we are attuned, we are connected, we listen well, we are accessible. When somebody turns to us, we are available and accessible and attuned. Those are all various forms of that A there. We are responsive, is what that's supposed to say. Responsible, but responsive is actually the term we want you to go with. Responsive means that I respond to you. It's so awful when we reach out to somebody or we seek to connect with somebody and we don't get much from them. There's actually this whole thing called the still face experiment where a mother and a baby are connecting and then she turns away and she doesn't show any emotion. And the baby essentially gets to the point where they're screaming and crying because they're wanting that connection. We want to be in relationships that are responsive. And then finally, we want to be emotionally engaged. The ARE is talking about, are you there for me? We're asking that in every relationship in some way or another, right? From work relationships to friendships. Our kids are asking it of our parents. Are you there for me?
One thing I'll add then too, when we don't get from a partner or a friend, roommate, coworkers, a lot of relationship distress is happening in our work settings right now. People I'm pastoring, their faith, their families being impacted by relationships at work. So this matters everywhere. But when somebody's not responsive, often shame kicks in, and it becomes the story, like Brene Brown, the story I'm telling myself, because if now I'm getting a bad reaction from somebody that I was hoping would be there for me, then this whole shame narrative kicks in. Do you want to speak about that at all?
So another a neuroscientist that I am actually good friends with now, and he's a mentor to me, Kurt Thompson, talks a lot about how shame impacts us. And shame is universal. You probably felt it 3 or 4 times already today. I came downstairs, my son, who's in high school, needed to get up early and had an event he needed to go to, and I was my talkative self, and he was staring down at his food, looking at me annoyingly as I was talking. And I finally was like, are you doing okay? And he's like, you're just talking. Shame, you know, I'm not connecting with my teenager. But, we just, all throughout the day, we have all these ways that we feel the shame. We see the look on somebody's face. We hear somebody's, discrediting of us. Or we think, oh, why did I say that thing? Why did I do that thing? Shame is universal. We all feel it all the time. It's like death by 1,000 cuts. It's tiny little things that happen often, and we need to combat the shame. And the way we combat the shame is we speak it. We share it. We share it with others. Shame wants us to hide. Guilt says, I can do something. I need to fix this. I did something wrong. I'm going to fix it. Shame says, I am wrong. I need to go away. I need to hide. It's divisive, and it makes us want to be alone, and it makes us want to hide. We think of when Adam and Eve had shame come over them, and they realized they were naked, and what did they do? They went and hid. They went and hid. And as they're hiding, what did God do? He went and found them. He said, where are you? I'm looking for you. I want to be with you. And then not only did he go and find them, but in their shame, he clothed them. He comforted them. That's how we eradicate shame. We bring it to each other and say, whoa, am I in a shame state? I blew it with the kids today. Can I just tell you the stupid thing I did? And your partner might say, yeah, that was really stupid, but I love you and I'm with you. And we need that resonance of connection to help us get through shame, or otherwise we continue to divide and push away. When we share shame, we don't only eradicate its power, but we create a testimony of God's power. God created us just like Jesus came for us. We are to come for each other, find each other, go to each other, and seek each other out for that reconnection that tells us, I am loved, and I can move through this life with that powerful sense of purpose, knowing that I am connected.
Yeah, and the key theme today, and we have a slide for this, is just moving from shame to vulnerability. We're moving to shame, from shame, places of shame where the enemy wants to isolate and divide and accuse, and where the Lord can meet us is when we're vulnerable, open-hearted, turning towards one another. So again, in those ARE relationships, this is still under the concept of risk. We're moving from shame to vulnerability. And just a word about vulnerability, if you consider Ephesians 5:13, which Heather kicks us off with, is everything exposed by the light becomes visible. Everything that is illuminated becomes a light. It means that when we reveal the things that are carrying shame around, even though the enemy says withdraw and withhold that information because you're unlovable if people see you as you really are. But when we turn towards a friend, a spouse, a parent, whoever is our healthy attachment figure, this is universal. We're saying this thing that the enemy is trying to define me by, would you stand with me and remind me of how God created me? And this becomes a light. It becomes a testimony. It becomes healing. And the shaming talk can keep us imprisoned. But as we have empathy and care for one another, it heals us and draws us closer to God and to others. And how will we actually grow in our relationships unless we reveal the places where we're carrying shame? Vulnerability is so important as a church. It's something I'm super grateful to just be a steward of Bethany. And many of you aren't Bethany people, so please just give me a little freedom to speak to the folks that do call this their home, is that this has been an imperfect church with imperfect people, but it has been a place where we've said, let's be vulnerable. Let's expose that which wants to divide and be shameful, to turn towards one another and be reminded that in our relationship, God says, I'm not going anywhere. Great relationships can be our greatest source of pain, but they are our greatest source of healing. And so when we seek connection and living into this, how we were created to be, there's a power of vulnerability. And just as an illustration towards this before we move into the next concept, Heather and I have been practicing this. We've had, I mentioned, 4 different seasons in 25 years where we're like, are we going to make it? Like, I don't know you, or I'm not being loved right by you, and we need outside therapists or our friends to be praying for, or some combination of all that. One of the things we've been practicing as we chart our course is practicing speaking our shame. And over the last year, we've been doing this better and better, especially this fall, where we'll do 2 things. We'll drop our kid off when we can, and we'll just walk, even sometimes only 15 minutes. Man, I'm feeling a lot of shame about this relationship at work, this talk didn't go well. That's something I said to the kids. We just speak it to each other. And then we use that Brené Brown phrase, the story in my head is, I'm unlovable, that I'm not good enough, that I'm a failure. And we've been bolder and bolder at speaking that to one another, and it's been a balm for our marriage in this season. So that's how we risk.
Well, and I would say too, I mean, we do this in our relationship with each other, and we're also really intentional about doing this in friendship. One of my dear friends in the room, Amy, who, is going to be speaking about parenting friendships, and we have text strings that are 8 paragraphs long. And something goes through, we go through something hard in life, and I'm typing it out to this person who I know on the other end, she might not be able to respond to me for a week. That doesn't even matter. I know she read it. I know she cares about me. I know she holds this. And that's that kind of relationship that I have. That's the power of this kind of relationship, is you don't even have to be in the presence of a person. You can think of how much they love you and know that you will get through that hard thing because you know that they would get it.
That's risk. And so essential in the season ahead as we're charting a course for flourishing relationships. The next piece of our wheel here, and it is going to be cyclical. We're going to do this over and over and over again. But secondly is reach. Kind of anchor verse for reach is so beautiful. Isaiah 62. And they will call them, God's people, and they will call them the holy people, the holy ones, the redeemed of the Lord, and you will be called sought out, a city not forsaken. My voice is emotive because there's so many people I'm walking with who have gone through a season where they don't feel like anyone's seeking them out. And they feel forsaken to God or to others. And we're here this morning on this journey of rebuilding, remembering that God has sought us out. We know that through his son, Jesus Christ. And there are people around you that want to rebuild and to seek you. This is such beautiful evocative language. We are the sought out ones.
We need people who are there for us and who do the things that validate us as human beings. When we think about our loneliness, our longings, the places where we maybe have desire and it's unmet. Oftentimes, our longings are speaking to our desire to belong, to be connected, to have meaning and purpose is more than just kind of success in life. And if we've learned anything, money and self-actualization and arriving at our goals, those are fun little peaks. But if we don't get to share that with somebody, it sort of has no meaning at all, right? This next slide will take us through how we do it. How do we reach in order to feel seen and known, we need people who do these things. We need people who see us. And by see us, these are people who recognize who we are, who see parts of who we are, and they point those things out. The best people in the world are those who you tell a story to or you connect with, and then the next time you see them, they say, how's that thing going? I mean, if there's ever a trick for connection, that's it. Remember a detail and bring it up the next time you see them. It might be gone, but the fact that you remember is so good. We need people who see us, who validate us, who say, yes, what you are feeling matters. And this is huge. We might not always agree. We can completely actually disagree. And we can say, well, the circumstances are not necessarily something I would do, but I see how you feel that way. And then we get to solutions later. So set solutions aside. When you hear all of these things about how to be there for other people, you don't see finding solutions, right? We don't see finding answers. We're typically not looking for that. Unless we're directly asking, most people are not looking for you to solve their problems. They're looking for that validation. They're looking to be seen, honoring people, caring for them, celebrating. Oh my gosh, it's so important to celebrate another person and the things that they are achieving and the risks they're taking. We risk because we know we'll be celebrated and somebody will be there for us. We need people who understand us, who support us, and that find is exactly what we see in the Bible over and over again. God finds us. He looks for us and finds us. We need people who find us. So we need people who do this, and the way to get there is be a person who does this. Be a person who validates, sees, honors, celebrates, understands, supports, and finds other people. And that becomes reciprocity, right? That's how
I know you're going to speak about kind of creating attachment figure in just a second, but I'll just name, like in my earlier illustration, there's been a lot of transitions in our friendships over the last couple of years. Probably you've experienced the same thing. So I want to extend freedom that, sometimes it's a new season and you build new friendships or you cultivate a new relationship. If you're in relationship with people who are not able to see, validate, reciprocal, you're going to hear about that if you show up at the Boundaries workshop, but also take care of yourself and turn towards new people. It's been a season of discovery of us even pouring into some older friendships and building some new relationships at a place of need, like who sees us in this season, and then us, dinner party for your birthday. What did you want? A table full of people to sit and eat good food, light the candles, and share highs and lows from their life, and it was transcendent. People that we'd been in relationship for less than a year, just opening their hearts to one another. And all of a sudden now someone's sitting at the table talking about losing a parent, and someone else who didn't even know each other coming around the table, sharing their highs and lows as well. Like when you see relationship unfolding, it's beautiful. So may this be a season where you're turning into some new attachments even.
And you reach for each other. One of these neuroscience terms that I love is the idea of co-regulation. So that's a very therapy professor-like term, co-regulation. But what that means is that our brains co-regulate with another person's brain when we are in distress, and we share that distress. When we share that shame or that difficult story with another person who cares about us, it co-regulates us. I think this is most profoundly felt in like when we think about a child having a temper tantrum. I have a range of children with a range of temperaments, and I have one child in particular who has a bigger emotional response to things. And in their toddlerness, they were these huge outbursts, which thankfully I'd had other children. I'm like, okay, this is kind of a normal season of development. But that unregulated, like frustration, that's just like coming out, and they're just so, and what we want to do as parents is like, you're okay, no, you're fine, no, it's all better. And watch what happens. It gets worse, it gets worse. But if you get right in there, if you co-regulate, this is what I did with that kiddo. I won't say he or she. They stomped their foot. They would just stomp their foot. They kind of own this in our family. This is their personality. But they would just stomp their foot. They'd be so mad. And so I would get down and I'd get in their face and go, you are so mad right now. You're just so mad. You just stomp that foot. You just stomp it. And they'd go, and then they'd get calmer. And then I'd say, of course you're angry. You're so angry. You have to take a nap, and you don't like naps. You're so mad about that. We're going to go take a nap. But just that sense of I see you, I feel what you're feeling. Find people who do that. Amy does this for me. My husband has learned how to do it for me. We've had to work at it. When people say, of course you feel the way you feel, and I feel it with you, then we go, I can handle it. I can handle it now, right? My mentor, Kurt Thompson, will say, there's not so much about self-talk as there is about talk from another. When we tell ourselves, I'm going to be okay, it's good to feel good about ourselves, but it's so much more powerful when another person says, you're going to be okay, and I am with you. God made us that way. God is telling us that all the time. He is with us. And this is how co-regulation works. And that's how we become resilient. That's how we face the hard things in life. That's how we get through to that reach, risk, and then...
Well, yeah, you talk about, when we hear attachment, we're like, all of a sudden we're thinking about all of our birth stories and our story of origin, so important. I love what you talk about. We can rebuild healthy attachment. Yeah. We can have new attachment figures. And a quote from you that I put as a slide, because I thought it was very profound. People we know will be there for us, often give us the courage to take risks in life, give us courage to live into our dreams, help us overcome challenges. They bear our burdens. They help us see our best selves. They give us strength to live our best lives, spiritually, emotionally, relationally, professionally, and physically. This is what we're reaching for. We're reaching romantically. We're reaching in our friendships. We're reaching in our spiritual relationships. We're people learning to reach again.
Yeah. So I'll just share a couple quick examples. I love what Rhonda shared about taking the risk of exchanging phone numbers. I will say that in a certain season of our lives, having young ones and them getting to a certain stage of life, it felt like, well, we kind of have our friends. You know, our friends are the parents of these kids, and, you know, then we had two more, and it's sort of like, well, we kind of already have our friends. Like, how do we do this? And we feel spread thin, and we have so much going on, and then COVID went, you know. And so we've sort of been emerging from that stage going, hey, where do we feel known? Where do we feel connected? And as Scott spoke to, coming out of COVID with some loneliness and some changes in relationships where we were intentionally seeking those people who can see and know and be with us. And I'll share two quick examples. I shared a little bit about my mentor and friend. I'll call him a colleague now, Kurt Thompson, who writes really beautiful books. He's a neuroscientist, Christian, and he does therapy, and he does these beautiful groups that I'm working on emulating soon. But in seeing his work, in knowing that he led a group practice, and seeing some of the ways that he talks about faith and relationship, I took a risk and said, will you mentor me? You know, you're in Virginia, I'm in Seattle, I'll come out and, you know, do this conference, but then we meet a couple times a month for the last couple years. And one of the beautiful things that has come out of those meetings is his advice to me often when I'm going through something hard. It's so wonderful because I feel all the shame, especially talking to another professional. Talk about being shame-based. Marriage and family therapists should have it figured out, right? We struggle too. And so in sharing these struggles, he will literally say, who are you spending time with right now? Who are you with? And he'll literally say, you need to be with the people who love you often. Mm-hmm. Through this hard time, you need to be with the people who love you. And what I think of is another group of dear friends that are recent friends, that I took a risk. These are friends of similar age kids who have young ones and old ones, and we just sort of met basically on the playground at school and changed numbers and went for a hike one day and kind of bonded. And now we have a similar text string where, hey, this is what I'm going through. And I won't name names, but one of them said, I literally peed my pants the other day laughing with one of my kids. Here's the puddle on the floor. Isn't that crazy? We're all going through perimenopause and pelvic floor issues because we've had 4 kids. And we're all in these seasons of
vulnerability
life where we get to say, oh, this is the crazy thing I'm dealing with. This is how I'm hurting for my child. Will you pray with me? Can I share that hurting thing, and will you hold it with me? And so we make sure to get together. We text each other, but we make sure to get together on a regular basis. This is a new friendship. Where are opportunities for you to have a new friendship? Are there people at work that you're seeing that, oh, I might actually really like that person? You know, on the sidelines of sports events, you know? I've got what I call my sideline friends for all my kids' sporting events that I just love. Michelle Woody right here. We sit on the sidelines of these volleyball tournaments that are all weekend long. We are so bonded. We're really getting to know each other. And, where are those opportunities for new connections where you can say, this is a person who gets it. This is a person who sees me. That's absolutely how Amy and I became friends. This is a person that I want to know better. I'm going to seek, I'm going to reach, and I'm going to risk and get to know that person in order to feel that deep connection that God made me for.
It's a great pivot. So we've got to be people of response so that you can risk and reach. And as you build your people, as you build up your healthy romantic relationship or friend relationship, whatever God's calling you in this season, be people of response. 1 Peter says it like this: above all, love each other deeply because love covers a multitude of sins. And when you consider Peter's writing this to the church in a great persecution, Jesus has ascended to heaven. His advice for them is, hey, in the midst of our turmoil, let's turn towards each other. Let's respond because love covers a multiple of sins. So we got to be people of response. And just, this is kind of a encouragement, but for people that identify as Christian in the room, I know most of us do, to be Christian is to love one another. We have to get better at relationships as God's people. We can be people living our values, but where we often live out our values is in relationship. I said earlier, relationships are the proving ground for our theology and where we display faithfulness to Christ. I use a great cultural prophet, Ted Lasso. Don't be alone in your pain. A great lassoism, we have this image of Ted Lasso is, I want you to be grateful you're going through the sad moment with all these other folks because I promise you there's something worse out there than being sad, and that's being alone and being sad. Ain't nobody in this room alone. And how often we can be in a room like this, we can be even next to the person that we're supposed to be bonded with, and we can feel utterly, utterly alone. Mm-hmm. Easy to see a TV show, easy come to a gathering. How do we live this? Like, we're called to be people who one another the gospel. Do you know this term, one another, is used in the New Testament over 100 times to serve one another, love one another, share with one another, encourage one another. The core of our faith is relationality. If you think of the Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, emptying to one another. The very nature of the Godhead is self-emptying love. It's staggering. The nature of our Savior is one who died to himself and physically died in order to beat death and sin and come alive again. As we celebrate in baptism, dead to sin, powerless, alive in Christ. So as Christians, we've got to get better at saying, my relationships matter to the heart of God because the core of our faith is relational. And I often use this term, what's not healed is handed down. Of just this, we've got to get better at this, gang. We got the next generation is begging us to be better at relationships with people above us, below us, around us. We've got to get better. The theologian Martin Buber said the development of the soul in the child is inextricably bound up with that of the longing for the thou, with the satisfaction and disappointment of this longing, connecting kind of that attachment theory with Christianity. I don't know if you ever heard of the Grant study out of Harvard. This is from the 1940s and kind of famous. 268 Harvard men researched their whole life of patterns of relationship and development and achievement. And one of the great findings of the Grant study was the quality of the relationship determines the quality of your life. These things are so significant. And on behalf of the Bethany Church, I just want to say, you don't come to church to find community. You come to church to build community. So I want to commission you. You are the relationship builders, that you would be turning towards one another, that you'd be people of response. Because we can blow it, but when we fail, we have an opportunity for both rupture and repair. I could tell you 100 stories of failure. I'll tell you just a quick one. This was years ago. I used to work as a fisherman. We'd work 18, 19 hours a day and then do it again and do it again. We'd work 100 days straight. Heather was a young mom and kind of stuck in a cabin, log cabin. Sounds nicer than it is when you're on an island away from your people. Very relational person.
Remote.
So
you have
remote.
To take a float plane
so
to
I was
get
out
there.
working 18 hours a day, caring for people, leading a staff. I'd come home, just literally, if I closed my eyes, I'd fall asleep. And one night I showed up and I was like, hey, I've made you tea. Let's sit on the deck.
To just to highlight the loneliness I felt. Like, raising kiddos is wonderful, right? And so lonely. I would joke that Oprah Winfrey and Martha Stewart are my friends because that's the only adults I see during the day. It's a little bit of TV. And so I just longed for the connection that we had. In the meantime, he's been with people all day long, and he's sort of ready to decompress. So I'm just longing for that, and he's in a different place.
You said, let's share our highs and lows. And what did I say to you?
That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. To this day, I'm like, how could you say that? It's crushed.
Guys, here's what's not to do. Here's how not to respond. So we'll hurt the people that we're supposed to love the most, won't we? We'll do this over and over again. None of us are Jesus. None of us. It doesn't matter if you're giving lectures, you're sitting in seats. We will hurt the people that we love the most. So we have to get better, even as we're called to respond at the reality of rupture and turning towards repair.
Well, and to give some grace to Scott, we have had to fight through that, and that was a very painful situation for me. Emotional intimacy is something that our world says is bad, right? We're supposed to control our emotions. And think about most of the hours of our day, we're in a work situation where emotions are definitely supposed to be under control. That's not my job. So most people, that's your job. And we feel it, right? We feel it in the presence of others. I shouldn't have an emotion. I shouldn't have a feeling. I shared something vulnerable with Kurt where I was just like, oh, I just hurt because I feel so much love. I know that's weird. He's like, why is that weird? You're made for that. And I'm like, yeah, but that's weird. Nope. And I felt that shame, and then he eradicated the shame by coming towards me with the phrase of, that's normal. But we feel it, right? Scott felt it. I married a person who was told over and over and over again, your emotions don't matter. Get back to work. Like, do the thing. You don't need a nap. Take a shower. It's like 4 hours of sleep. This is the kind of stuff that we're battling together to find connection. Solitary confinement is literally the highest form of punishment. It's literally the highest form of punishment because that sense of isolation is the hardest, most harshest thing we can experience as a human being. Our greatest fear when we really come down to it is, I will be alone and no one will come for me in this hard time. That's absolutely the most damaging thought, is feeling unseen, and it's a catastrophic part of our actual survival, is to have these emotions that we share with others who see us and know us and connect with us.
Yeah, so the next step is just normalizing. Rupture is going to happen. Rupture and repair, rupture and repair. Gottmanism is John Gottman, who Zach Riddle, one of our breakout speakers, is really in tune with. But what Gottman taught me years ago was healthy conflict regulation. There is no conflict elimination. And if you're like me that hates conflict, some of you are sitting in the room and there's disrepair because you said the mean thing or you've been in a long dry season. So know that hope is possible, but we have to get better at both rupture and repair. A Bible verse to illustrate this, Matthew 5:7. Blessed are the merciful, they shall receive mercy. Again, charting the course. We can't give a solution today. We're just beginning the work ahead.
So this is a really important part. Scott literally sort of was like, do we really have to talk about rupture and repair? Let's not talk about conflict. It's kind of important, We have ruptures. We have times of disconnection. And what we long for most is reconnection. We might sort of demonize and make enemies in the moment, but really what we want is we crave that harmony. God made us for that. When there's rupture, we crave that togetherness. And how do we get there? This universal fear of isolation pushes us further away, and we must work towards connection. There's this amazing study that we talk about a lot in emotion-focused therapy called the fMRI study. This was done by James Cone, and what this study is, in essence, is they took couples who are in distress, and they put a partner in an fMRI machine, radio imaging of their brain, and they did this exercise to say, what does the influence of comfort of another person. So what they did in the fMRI machine was shock the toes of the person to see where your brain lights up with pain from the shock. Not too bad, but enough to show that there's pain. And so they brought the nurse in to hold the hand of the person, and they shocked the toes, and it got a little bit better because that's supposed to help, right? But when you're in distress with your partner, that feels awful. They brought the partner in distress in the room. They kind of assessed that they were in a tough place, and they shocked the toes, and the brain went more in pain. that causes more pain when you're in distress. Like literally physical pain in your body feels bigger when we're in distress with a person that we're supposed to love. So long story short, they do emotion-focused therapy, they get reconnected, they feel bonded, they work through their issues, they're feeling intimate and connected, they come back, and they put the same person in the fMRI machine, shock the toes, yep, it works, brain lights up, there's pain. They bring in the partner to hold the hand, shock the toes, barely registers pain. The partner is holding their hand. There's physical electric shock shooting through their body, and their brain is like, I'm good. I can handle this. I'm okay. Is that the most amazing godly metaphor you've ever heard in your entire life? We can go through hard things because we know that people love us, right? When we go into hard situations, it's not like, oh, I'm the best, I'm amazing, self-talk. It's like, oh, this person believes in me. They see me, they know me, and I can get through this. So when we look at rupture and repair, what we want to think about is the repair is so important. It is so important to acknowledge the pain that we cause another person. And most of us suck at apologies, if I can just say that. Most families, most people, it's hard. We feel shame. We don't want to, just like, I'm sorry, I said I'm sorry, like, leave me alone. We need to be reflective of the pain we cause and say, I see the pain I caused you. And a good apology says, I see the pain I caused you. I feel it because I caused you pain, and I'm going to be different. That's a good apology. That's a good shame eradicator that brings us close again to other people.
Yeah, and that kind of brings us home, like the reward. Again, I want to undersell that we're not giving quick, easy solutions. We're charting a course, but the reward. The Bible verse here, Proverbs 27, is iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. We were made for relationality. We are wounded in community. We are healed in community. No way around it. And so as we finish up, and a lot of what you'll be going into the workshops to just be resourced towards is like turning towards the reward of when you do that repair, the goodness that awaits.
Yeah. We are stronger people when we have these kinds of relationships and connection. And so people fear like codependency and I'm going to be, lost in this relationship. You are actually stronger as an individual when you have a strong cloud of witnesses. When you have that cloud of witnesses, we go into life more fully knowing who we are. We might be different than some of those people. We might think differently, but the reflection and connection of others is what makes us more ourselves. And we have what's called constructive or effective dependency. Not codependency, but effective, hardwired dependency. We are uniquely made to be in relation with unique others. And that's how we're unique, right? That's what makes us amazing.
Yeah. The more connected we are to others, the more yourself you really are. Mm-hmm. So we are turning towards each other in the season ahead, rebuilding relationships, rebuilding trust, rebuilding attachment. This is the reward that awaits.
Yes. This last slide, when my pain comes in, so will my community. So will the people who love me. When my pain comes, I will begin to anticipate that I am to be loved. Not that I will be left alone in isolation with my distress. And this, again, is from my mentor, Kurt Thompson. But we are meant to come for each other, see each other, know each other, and we will be stronger because of it. And all these wonderful seminars that are happening today are going to enrich that experience. So thank you for being with us today. Yeah. Go and love and be loved.
Yeah, well, don't go yet, but yes.
Oh, he's going to pray.
I mean, what is seen? Like, where do we start? What is seen? There's some work to do. We're not flourishing. What is unseen? The Spirit is with us. You have people who you can build attachment with. There is reward as we do the work, and we do it over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. So may you chart the course today. May you have deeper, healthy relationships. May God do some new work in your life. If you're in a place of pain today, our heart is with you. We can sit and lament together. This isn't easy. It's good. God's calling us all, charting the course to flourishing relationships. I'm going to pray for us now. God, thank you so much for these people and what you're doing in their lives. And God, we name the pain. We name the raw spots. We name those places that maybe people are showing up today looking for some hope and healing. God, we know that you are the healer. So heal us in our hearts and in some of the wounds that we've been through, some of the awful things that we've experienced. And God, remake us in your image as relational beings. And would you just even today just set us into one new budding relationship or one new encouragement to do something different, or to text somebody we haven't seen for a while, or to turn towards a child or to a roommate or to a spouse. God, wherever we're at this morning, would you work in us in these next few hours to build us up? God, we want to flourish. We want that flourishing life. So we're hungry, we're eager, we're ready for you to show up. And all God's people said, Amen. Thank you so much. Lydia is going to come up and share next steps.